Pray this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Thank you very much. I want to welcome each of you here today as we are here to share. Today is a conclusion of our Colossians study, or time spent in Colossians. It's taken a couple of Sabbaths. Okay, it's taken us a few Sabbaths to get through the book of Colossians, but very useful, I think, very applicable, helpful information. To cover some brief announcements today, today is, really starting on the 3rd of December, we've now gone up to 100 inside. So I feel like I've been driving down the interstate, and the interstate has had a lot of construction zones. Driving down 70 miles an hour, and then it says, slow your speed to 35. Got to drive 35 for, seems like a long time, and then we get the clearance to drive 70 again. So we go up to 70, and just to be warned that our speed is going to have to drop down to 35 again. So I feel a little like that, but COVID is in a lot of ways kind of similar to that, in that there's a speed limit that we get to follow, and so we follow the direction wherever possible, right? So we're up to 100, so talk to church members, talk to friends, let them know what is going on. We'd like to see you bringing your friends, bringing your acquaintances. This morning, like I mentioned, we are wrapping up our study in Colossians. Great, I think great study. I think great information presented. Today will be a little different in that it will be less monologue and more, hopefully, contribution from you. I'd like to get into discussion. Paul is concluding in this book. He has spent 3 chapters talking about and discussing really what is the gospel and how it plays out in the life of the Christian. So, to close out our study in this book, we are in Colossians chapter 4. I would encourage you to go there. This final lesson talks about the power of prayer. And it gives us insight into the heart of our church here in Pendleton. Gives us a window into what biblical Christianity really is all about. So if you would, listen to this question, and I'd invite you to come up and share. Tell about a time in your life where you have had, or you have tried to share the gospel. You wanted to share Jesus with someone who didn't know him. What was that experience like? I remember when I was in high school. I'll share a brief story as you think. When I was in high school, I worked for a company outside in the community. And someone asked me early on in my experience at this job, they found out I worked or went to school at Platte Valley. So they said, what is the school? What is it all about? Is that like a boys' town, right? Because it was a boarding school. They thought it was a boys' town, and I said, no, it's not a boys' town. where boys, girls come, and it's school where we learn and study, and then we do some extracurricular activities like PE or football or different things like that. We have jobs on campus that we can do. And we discussed then what that all meant. I had an opportunity to share Jesus. It didn't go well. Right? It didn't go well. But the door was open, and I approached that opportunity with fear and trepidation. Hopefully your experiences have gone better. What were your experiences like? We have a microphone here, and we have a microphone here, so just so people can hear what you're saying. You've tried to share Jesus. What was that like? No, you can take it off.
What if it's unintentional? That you don't intend? That something happens around you, and through that you get to speak of God and of Jesus. We live close to a young couple that by all outward appearances are not connected to Jesus. Yet the young woman who lives there came down one day and was speaking, and she said, because of a legal situation, the little children can't be in the home at this time. There's a whole legal mess of the world that has separated this family from these young children. And she says, you know, the worst thing where they're staying, they don't allow them to say their prayers. So never assume by outward appearance that the person is not a child of God. And the young man in that couple came down one day, and he said, can I just talk to you? My mom just died. The last memory I have of my mom is her holding me while my brother hit me in the face 11 times. And what can you say in a circumstance? Christian platitudes don't work in situations like that. Now, intentionality, like Gary was talking about, when you have it all planned out, you have the little piece of paper in your pocket that you can say, here, take this. It's all the answers. This person doesn't need answers. They need compassion. They need the grace that was given to me. And this young man is torn up by. And so through this circumstance, the death of his mom, we've come closer. We've come closer. But do I say, oh, God will, put his arm around you and comfort you? That doesn't work. Because when you're in the midst of that immediate grief because a lot of his grief is, if only, I knew that my mom was sick, but if only I had gone and, made peace. If only we hadn't been separated for this number of years. That's when you can say, it's not the time for platitude. It's just the time for grace. And just reach out and, listen to their story. Because they will tell it whether you want to hear it or not. So sometimes it's not intentional.
Thank you. Yes, please. Didn't mean to shout in your ear.
Well, as you know, I work in a doctor's office, and we have a wide variety of religions, Catholic, Mormon, Adventist, Baptist, some other New Agey thing. But one of the girls and I were talking one day, and Jesus came up, and going to church came up, and we decided that during stressful times, and I think I mentioned this in church once, that now then it came to the point where I would look at her, and we knew things were going bad, and we would go like this, give the Jesus sign to each other. And it was kind of just a little secret thing. I found out later that she and her daughter, who's a teenager, are reading a chapter in the Bible every night. And even when her and her daughter are apart, they still read the chapter that was assigned for that night. And now she doesn't work with me anymore, but I had to come to the point where I realized that God gave me a new opportunity because we have a new employee. So we're going to have to get out the Jesus sign and see how that works with the new girl. So we'll see.
That's super cool. Yes? Sorry we didn't bring the mic to you.
So a few years ago when we were living here in Pendleton, we had a neighbor that had worked in law enforcement for years and years. She was a pretty hard person, told you like it is. And Sierra and her became really good friends because they'd stand at the fence line and talk and chat. And one day she came to me and she says, you know, Sierra is such a little witness. And I said, what do you mean? And she says, Sierra has this habit of going out and swinging for long periods of time on her swing. And she will sing at the top of her lungs. And my neighbors said that she could always hear Sierra singing her Sabbath school songs out on her swing. And she's like, it's just like she's bringing worship to me when she's out there singing and talking about Jesus. And she's always asking me, do you say grace before you eat your food? And do you say your prayers at night? She was always putting her on the spot. And the other thing is, my sister spent a few years in the church in her teens and did not have a good experience with it. And so she shut down, didn't want to talk about religion at all. And she and I had a shaky relationship growing up. She's 11 years older than me. So it took a while for us to finally connect and become really close. And I've never pushed religion on her. I've never really talked about God and the Bible and anything with her too much. But I've noticed in recent years, because I haven't been pushing that on her, that she's starting to ask questions. And it's just every once in a while, she'll call me up. And the last time was just a few months ago. She went to see the Noah's Ark out in Kentucky. And she called me up and she's like, you know, I spent the whole day, because they presented that the dinosaurs were saved on the ark. She's like, that just didn't make any sense to me. And I was able to talk to her about what I believe in that regard and what I've studied in Bible and Spirit of Prophecy, and she was really open to that. And I just gave her a nugget. And at the end, she's like, you know what? That makes so much sense. So we've been having some pretty cool conversations the past few years. And she's always the one that brings it up, so it's pretty cool.
Very, very cool. So based on your interactions, based on the interactions individuals have with you, you experience or witness problems. If you could fix anything through prayer, what would it be? Right, so I ask, other than salvation of the whole world, that's kind of I think, a cheater's answer. That's the platitude. World peace. Yeah. Less violence in the world. Yeah, you Norma, you said something. A bullet points? Multiple choice. Nope. If you in the evening or devotion time in the morning, or during your time in prayer with God, and you had a request, right? Solomon, he had a request of God. Remember what that request was? Wisdom, right? Give me wisdom. He was overwhelmed with the job that he had at hand, so he was in his time in prayer with his Maker, and he asked for wisdom. I look at this job and it's insanity. Give me wisdom. What would you What would you pray for? If you could pray for one thing that could fix a problem in the world, what would it be? Change me. Clear in the back. What was it? Learn to pray like Jesus. Somebody else said something? Mercy. Very, very powerful. Very powerful. I loved going through the book of Ephesians because Ephesians presented the gospel in tangible ways. It wasn't like proof texting where you take a verse out and you ignore everything else. Sitting down with the whole book, reading through it. I love the study through Colossians because it's not like proof texting where you take one verse, pull it out, and apply it to a teaching or an idea that you have cooking around in your head or my head. It's taking the verse and leaving it in its context and reading the book, studying through it. I love doing this because we get the big picture. What does Christianity look like? As we study the book of Colossians, what does Christianity look like? As Paul wraps up the book of Colossians, this letter to the Colossians, he includes some final instructions to the church. Really some final instructions to us as well. And then he includes some very specific messages and greetings. In his instructions, he reminds them and he reminds us to be devoted in prayer. And specifically, he requests prayer to him. Prayer, not prayer to him, but prayer for him. To have open doors and clear words as he proclaims the gospel. Do you pray for your Paul? Do you pray for your leader, whoever your leader may be? Do you pray for that? I covet the prayers of the saints. I am no Paul, but I covet your prayers. Do you pray for your head elder? Do you pray for Donald Trump? Do you pray for Governor Brown? Do you pray for Joe Biden? Do you pray for your leaders? Paul believes that prayer has consequences. When we are sitting down with our Maker, Paul believed that prayer has consequences. Someone says, I pray for faith. Be careful what you pray for, because God will give you more faith if you ask him. He will work on that. And sometimes in order to have more faith, the road ahead will not be smooth. Specifically, what's that? Pray for patience. Oh, every night I pray for patience. Look out what you pray for. I would encourage you, pray for it anyway. Right? Pray for it anyway. Because God will, what are we told? He that what is it? He that began a good work in you, will he walk away and desert you? Oh, sometimes I have a chore that I need to do and I get started on it and then I walk away and I forget that I started this other chore and the chore is, does God do that? No, he that began a good work in me, in you, will complete it. Right? He won't walk away and forget. Paul then tells the Colossians to make the most of every opportunity with those who don't yet know Jesus. Especially, Paul is closing with two thoughts. Pray for others in their proclamation of the gospel, and then proclaim the gospel yourself as well. This is where the rubber meets the road of Christianity. It's one thing to come to church every Sabbath. It's one thing to come to church on whatever day you come to church. It's one thing to come to church. It's something completely different when we go out into the community, isn't it? It's the rubber meets the road of Christianity. We should have a sign at our exit that says, now is when you enter the mission field. Right? Because that's really where the mission field is. Rubber meets the road. How will your relationships with the concept of Colossians, we've been through Ephesians as well, with the concept of Ephesians, with the concept of Colossians rooted in our brain, how will your relationship with Christ and with each other change how you interact then with the world? What does that mean? It will look a lot different than what we think it should look. So the difficulty with you staying rooted and grounded in your location right now is that people listening to you can't hear what you're saying. Maybe we could have a roving mic. I think what you said is really, really important, and I'd like you to repeat that. Oh, come on.
I already forgot what I said. No, I think that what he envisions us doing a lot of times looks completely different than what we are thinking. So we have an idea what would be cool in the community or how we could touch people's lives, but he has specific people in mind, and he has specific needs out there that we don't even know about. And if we're being open-minded and letting him guide, then we'll probably end up doing and going in places that we never thought were even a need or whatever. Something like that.
Anybody else? Something you'd like to share? I would contend that with the preaching of the gospel and the acceptance of the gospel into the life, there will always be a change. Always. Either for the good or for the bad, right? There is no middle road. There isn't. So if we accept the gospel of Jesus Christ into our life, that puts us on a mission to do things possibly very differently, doesn't it? My platitudes have to be left aside, and God puts me in a place where I might feel uncomfortable. But that doesn't really matter. At the end of the day, my comfort is not part of the picture. It's not an ingredient, right? It's to go and tell. And I think the 11 or 12 disciples and those who were in the upper room were uncomfortable. That put them on a place that they were in a difficult situation. Well, let's continue. If you would, open your Bibles to Colossians chapter 4, and we'll read verse 2 through 4. We read verse 1 a few Sabbaths ago. Colossians chapter 4, starting with verse 2. Continue earnestly in prayer, being vigilant in it with thanksgiving, meanwhile praying also for us that God would open to us a door for the word, to speak the mystery of Christ, for which I am also in chains, that I may make it manifest as I ought to speak. So based on those verses, specifically verse 2, what are two essential parts of being devoted to prayer? Two parts he mentions. What is it? What is that again? Being alert. Yeah, anybody else? I saw continually earnestly, or continue earnestly in prayer, being vigilant and with thanksgiving. Excuse me. Being vigilant in it with thanksgiving. Why is it important to be both watchful and thankful? Does it matter as a Christian to be watchful and thankful? Me too. Yeah? One more time. Go ahead and take the mic and you'll repeat it.
What you need to do.
Yeah. Anybody else? Why is it important to be both watchful and thankful? Story of the 5 foolish and the 5 wise virgins. Lynn, you wanted to.
Because if I stand in an attitude of thankfulness, I'm aware of what I have, not what I don't have. And I can be more aware of what someone else needs if I'm standing in that. Not that they're needing of anything of me, but what they're actually in need of. Being watchful or vigilant just means that when we pray, right, we say, put somebody in our path. Well, if I don't pick my head up from prayer and look around and become aware of my surroundings, I will miss opportunity after opportunity that God puts in my path.
Anybody else?
I went to the Walmart store and I walked in. I was looking for some stuff and they really didn't have what I wanted. And I found myself in the candy aisle. And I kind of walked up and down the candy aisle and nothing really jumped out at me, but this lady was in one of these little wheelchair things, you know, the powered wheelchairs. and she had dropped something. There was really no way for her to really pick it up. And I just happened to be a couple feet away from her, so I reached down and picked it up, handed it to me, and I think that God had me there just to help her pick that certain piece up.
It's more than just collecting the sweets. It's being sweet to someone else. Sweets jump out at you. Snickers bars jump out every time they get a chance. Now in verse 2 through 4, how do these verses show that prayer is also causal? I mentioned this earlier. I would contend that the disciples, the apostles, people that wrote the book that we call the Bible, really believed that when you prayed, things happened. So how do verses 2 through 4 show that prayer is also causal? It has an expected consequence. Opens the door for his word. When the pastor speaks that the grass grow, does the grass grow? God makes the grass grow. When the pastor goes out and he speaks and says, "Let there be light," does light happen? Well, if I flip the switch. If God is behind it, when the word goes out, does it come back void? No. So the disciples, they were praying. James talks about this, praying with no faith, right? Prayer is something that the disciples really believed. When we pray, God hears and he answers according to his will, right? What's the category of the things Paul requests prayer for? What? Things that are good. Specifically in this chapter, what is Paul praying for, though? Proclamation, isn't it? Yeah, Paul had a prayer. And the prayer was very similar to what Jesus' prayer was. Well, not to mention John 17, but at the end there was a mandate or a direction that Jesus gave his disciples, and that was to go, right? So the proclamation or the advancement of the gospel, right? So Paul had that same message to more than just, well, Colossians chapter 4 verse 5 says, "Walk in wisdom towards those who are outside, redeeming the time." How does verse 5 instruct us to act towards outsiders? What did you say, Norma? Go get them. What did you say? Go towards them. Yeah, I'm reminded of the World Trade Centers. You guys remember those? there were two groups of people. One group was leaving and another group was going towards, right? I would contend that the Christian is one who's called to go towards the building that's going to fall. Not the one with the white collar on around his or her neck, right? Not the one who's been ordained so much. It's everyone who's accepted the gospel of Jesus Christ into their life. The commission is then placed on them to go, right? So how do you think verse 5, what do you think verse 5 means by be wise in the way you act towards those who aren't Christians, and to make the most of every opportunity? What does that mean? Yeah. Somebody else? Matthew, did you raise your hand, or were you? Matthew, would you?
To live and be wise around those that haven't been touched by God means that we recognize that maybe they haven't, but they were still made in the image of God. Is anyone not made in that image? So to be wise in that and recognizes these are just people who don't believe. That's the only separation. There should be no other, because we share the same red blood. We share the same air. There's not special air for us, special Christians. And to be wise, I also think, means there's a time when you bring out the truth of our beliefs.
Right.
But most of the time, I believe it's better to just extend grace.
Yep.
Because isn't that what that says in the next verse?
Yep.
Be gracious in your speech.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you. Let's continue on with verse 6. Verse 6 in Colossians 4 says, let your speech always be with grace, as you mentioned, seasoned with salt, that you may know how you ought to answer each one. So in verse 6, what do you think seasoned with salt means? Matthew will go to you, and you can speak your answer into the mic. What do you think this means, to be seasoned with salt?
Leaves them wanting for more. They question, like, what is it that's so different about you? You're so loving and so kind. They want to know more. And it gives you the opportunity to share Jesus.
Yeah. When you're in community, well, in your home, and you want to make a soup, one of the ingredients that you add to your soup is what? Salt. Why do you add salt? It enhances the flavor. So you're trying to bring out the flavor in the potatoes, right? You're trying to bring out the flavor in the onions, or different ingredients in your soup. That's what salt does. It gives flavor. It deepens the bowl of soup and makes it taste much better. So we have opportunity to be salt. You had your hand up.
Pray before opening mouth. Engage brain before opening mouth.
Yeah.
Kindness speaks louder than doctrine.
Yeah. 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 Why do you think Paul instructs us this way? Lynn?
Because when it says seasoned with salt, can I put salt in something and the rest of it not absorb the salt, not taste like the salt? Because you're not dealing with just one individual. If we're talking about individuals, that individual is going to speak about what an interaction with a believer is like to somebody else, probably another unbeliever. If he is seasoned with, well, what you need to do, I'm sorry, but you're smoking, you're drinking, you're living in sin, they're aware of that. They know these things. Do we need to tell them that? No. The only thing that we can do, it says, the disciples will be known by one thing, how we treat others. Right. So salt may be not applied just on the tail of a bird because you want to catch him, but in the interaction with others so that you can expand that and more than one person be affected. Because remember, Paul chained to how many people? Every day. He had an effect on every one of those people that he was chained to.
Yeah. A bowl of soup or a pot of soup, when you dump salt into it, the salt does not stay on the surface. Does it? Even if you don't stir the pot of soup, the salt does not stay on the surface. That salt falls down through the crevices and the cracks and through the ingredients of each part of the soup. Danielle.
So it says to have it seasoned with salt. It doesn't talk about dumping 2 cups of salt in.
It doesn't?
No, just a little bit of salt.
So amount is important. It's a season, not a... My older brother, talking to that point, my older brother, he was given opportunity when we lived in Kalispell to make a cornbread Friday night. Oh dear is right. 2 ingredients, they're both white. kind of hard to, tell the difference if you're just learning how to cook. And so he put the amount called out for sugar, he did salt instead. That was a cornbread we did not finish. All right, salt is nice, isn't it? Salt is good. Salt is a necessary ingredient. But salt becomes very bad also if we mistake the sugar for the salt. So here's even more application. Some strategies as we conclude the book of Colossians. What strategies can we implement that can help us have a better prayer life? What things can we do? Matthew.
just you and God, it makes a big difference.
Shut out the outside so we can have a connection between God and me. Right? Is that what you said? Makes a big difference. Somebody else? What are some strategies? Yeah.
Remember that God is at work all the time. That's what his son said. My Father is always at work.
Yeah.
So I believe sometimes I may short circuit something when I don't open my eyes. I even pray with my eyes open sometimes so I can see where God is at work and then go join him instead of running ahead saying, "Bless me, Lord." But that means I have to have my eyes open.
Yeah. Eyes open, being aware of what's going around us. Very important. Somebody else? Now, who is someone? Jesus was intentional, I believe. Use an example. The woman or the man on the other side of the Sea of Galilee was possessed by demons. That going over and having an interaction with them did not happen, I believe, by accident. I think Jesus went there on a mission to set these people free from their demonic oppression. Assuming that we had an interaction with God, we've accepted the gospel of Jesus Christ, he's made a difference in our life. Jesus sends us on a mission. Who is your mission? Who is your mission? And are we going to be intentional? And intentionality may be just stooping down and picking up a bag of candy and giving it to someone who needs it. Who is that person? This, I believe, is a call for me to application of the gospel in my everyday life. And I think it's important for me, for each one of us, to follow up with that call. Intentionality. Yes. All right.
What if we flip the question upside down? Who is someone I will never proclaim Jesus to this week? And when I look at it from that light, it kind of knocks down the barriers. Well, that person's obviously a meth head, so they've made their choice, unlock themselves in. Who is someone I will not proclaim Jesus to? Because, why? For me, that breaks barriers. Because who am I to say who I'm supposed to proclaim Christ to? It's him. He'll put the person in front of us, whoever it is. If we pray that, this is a belief of mine, a personal prayer belief. If I pray, put someone in my path, it'll happen. Always. But not usually. 99% of the time, it's not who I want it to be.
Yeah.
I've been contemplating whether I should share this or not. Had an experience this week, and kind of along the lines of what you're saying. Being intentional doesn't necessarily mean having a particular person in mind as much as being ready. Like he's saying, being prepared, being watchful, being ready, because God has those people in mind. And this week, it was such a random thing. We have this little mower that was given to us with the house we bought, and it hasn't worked the whole time we've lived there, 18 months, and we've been contemplating on getting a new battery for it recently and getting a little plow for the front of it to push the snow around, you know, get some chains for it. Well, just this week, I was like, we need to do that. Let's just do it and get it done. Start moving forward with it. I don't know why it just became this thing where it just had to be done right now. So I told Caleb, text me. I'm going to Walla Walla, text me the kind of battery we need and where to get it from. So he sends me this picture, and he says it originally came from Les Schwab. And I'm like, Les Schwab is a tire place. They have batteries? He's like, yeah, they have batteries. So I go there. And he was like, you don't have to get it from Les Schwab, but that's where this one came from. So I was like, whatever, I'll just go to Les Schwab. So I go to Les Schwab, go in the front door. They tell me, well, you need to go over to that building over there for the battery. Okay, so I go over to that building over there. And there's this lady in front of me. And mind you, I've been the last month, it's just been like, you know what, we have enough. We have plenty. It's just pass Christmas on to other people this year. You know, we're going to have a small Christmas. The kids will have stuff, but let's just give it away. There's other people out there that need it more than us right now. So I've just been kind of like keeping my eyeballs open for someone that might need help. And God has been giving us opportunities, like over and over the past few weeks, just opportunity after opportunity to give. And I'm not expecting anything going into Les Schwab, and there's this lady in front of me in line, and she looks visibly upset, and she's like, what kind of battery do I need? And the guy points at this paper and says, you can do this one. This one's a little bit less expensive. It's not as good quality, but it'll get you going, get your truck going. And she's like, I guess it's going to have to be that one, because and she just starts, like, she says, we can't afford much. Is there anything you guys can do? And my business has been shut down recently because of COVID, and we just don't have income coming in right now and all this stuff. And then she just starts bawling, and she's like, I need a moment. And she leaves the building, and it was just like, I didn't even have to think about it. I just felt like someone was pushing me up there. Just get up there. And I was like, what does she need? And he points at the battery, and I was like, psh, here. Gave him the card. Dealt with it. And it was almost dealt with. I was going to try to get it done and leave before she got in there. Grab what I needed and grab what she needed real quick and leave. But she came back in before, and she saw my card in there, and she's like looking at us quizzically, and I just looked over and said, I got you, honey. It's all right. And she's like, what? And I was like, gotcha, it's okay. Merry Christmas. And she just like burst into tears all over again. Went over, gave her a hug, and she's like, you don't understand. I've been sick. I've had pneumonia. My business has been down. All this. And I was like, you know what? It's okay. Just when you're able to, pass it on. You know, don't worry about it. Merry Christmas. And she's like, oh, I do pass it on. I have a, she didn't call it a ministry, but it's something up there in Walla Walla that reaches out to women that are abused. And so she's already doing work in the community to help. But yeah, it was just a really cool experience, and I was thankful. But it was one of those things where it's like God had everything set up before, and I didn't even know that I was part of this whole scheme. It was really cool.
Yeah. That's really cool. That's really cool. It talks about going, running ahead of God or letting God lead. That's awesome. With all those thoughts running around in your brain, I would encourage you to go back and read through Colossians again. very, very life changing. Now, as we close, we have a volunteer that would like to, does she still want to pray? She can, just right there is fine. Let's pray.
Dear Jesus, thank you for your lunch, and thank you for this day, and thank you that everyone came, and amen.